All right, welcome back to this episode of Demand Gen Radio. So glad you guys are tuning in. We have a topic today. We talk about here the methods and technologies for driving growth. And if you want to sustain your growth, well, it is super, super important that you have a phenomenal client experience because the best products in the world don't win. That's been proven many, many times again. I will talk in a moment about a little experience that I had from a client experience perspective one morning recently, just to kind of talk about one type of client experience. But my guest is very, very passionate about the topic. And when I said, hey, let's do a podcast together, we haven't done one. What do you want the topic to be? It was a zero hesitation that the topic was on client experience. So, Alan, thank you for joining. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for inviting me, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
And if you guys are just listening, I was just about to say, as you can see, we do simulcast the podcast on our YouTube channel, which is Demand Gen TV. And you'll see that Alan is the founder and principal of Demand Revenue. We'll get into that in just a moment. But why was client experience like boom? That's what I want to talk about.
I think client experience and creating a remarkable customer experience is so important for so many reasons. First of all, it's common sense. And we all want to be treated the way, we want to be treated, and we should treat our customers that way and give them some love. And, I've seen industry stats that only 10% of the companies are doing it right, and really treating customers well and creating a remarkable customer experience. And, we've all had situations where that doesn't happen and how we feel when it doesn't happen. Also, I believe strongly that creating and sustaining and improving a remarkable customer experience is tied to long-term financial performance more than anything else. It's tied to lifetime value.
Yeah.
It's tied to net revenue retention, and it's tied to multiples. So CFOs should pay attention as well as chief marketing officers because it's so important to corporate growth and health on a long-term basis.
For sure. I wanted to share, as I said, a story about a client experience, and just share that because every company needs to take a look at who their client is and architect the experience that the client wants, not that the organization wants, but that the client wants. And I don't think you can do necessarily surveys to just come up with what that client experience is. There are things that you're certainly going to get. I mean, I'm sure when Nordstrom put their client experience together and thought about their return policy, they probably didn't have to look very far for feedback on what a return policy should look like, which was almost like a no questions asked type of return policy. But right. My story was this, Alan. So last week, before the July 4th vacation, I did not have as much time in the morning to have my normal breakfast, which is a pretty healthy breakfast. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get an Egg McMuffin from McDonald's. And there's one literally on the drive to my office, which is a whopping 12-minute commute. Nice commute.
Not bad.
So I get into the garage and I pull out my mobile phone, which is not near me right now, or I'd show it. But I pull up the McDonald's application and the McDonald's mobile app, which is connected to my Apple Pay already. Pulled up the interface. The Egg McMuffin was right there because it knows that I've ordered those before. There was a promotion, which was right in front of me too, around items for breakfast. So right time of day promotions, right time, right place. I clicked on the Egg McMuffin. I clicked on reorder and then hit, I think, one more button to confirm the order. And then it said, your order has been placed. Do you want to do drive-through or do you want to do pick it up in store? I wrote drive-through. It says, looks like you're not there. I drove down the street, turned in, went up to the call box and said, order, I think it was like DT35. They said, please drive forward. I didn't have to pay for anything. Didn't have to get a receipt. Went to the second drive-through window, grabbed the bag and left. It was a frictionless customer experience. And that's what I was looking for. I need to have a conversation with anybody. And they have designed and architected it in such a way that that's what I was looking for. And, certainly, I think if you're in the fast food business, you should make it fast and frictionless. And McDonald's, at least in my area, does a great job. And it was really cool how they're using mobile and geofencing and and all of those things. But
Yep.
you and I are probably going to talk a lot more about B2B or B2C customer experience that's different than drive-through, fast food and retail. But good on McDonald's for adapting to the times and modernizing their experience. Thoughts before we dive into more, sophisticated or elaborate customer experiences. But my point was that that's what I expected, that's what I got, and it was the perfect experience. And the food was what I ordered as well.
Good. That's great. And just think about how many times it doesn't work that way. Think about how many times you're trying to get a hold of a company and they shield the people behind an iron wall and make you go through 10 prompts before you can speak to a person. People buy and people interact the way they want to interact. And that can change based on who the customer is. Some people want to speak to a person. Some people want to do it completely electronically, like you did. And the real important thing is to meet them where they are and understand what their needs are and where their frustrations can be with your process.
And my example was really about the buying experience. And I know that you have shared this with me. You've said, like, far too often people think about the customer experience after they've purchased the product. And to contrast, McDonald's, Five Guys does think about that, because in the bottom of the bag, they intentionally put additional French fries if you order French fries, because they know that when you're driving and you're reaching in and grabbing the fries out of the bag, that when you get to there's none left, you're going to go, oh, I hope some fell out. Well, they make sure some fell out. I'm doing air quotes if you can't see me, because they're intentionally putting in the bag. Why do so many companies think about the post-buying experience? And I'd love to get your thoughts around that, because if you're not off to a good first impression, you may not even get to the buying experience.
Clearly, I couldn't agree more. And, the examples I'll cite come more from B2B and B2B2C, which is the locus of my experience across a number of industries. And, what I would say is the customer experience really begins at the prospect experience. So if you think about your demand process and who you're reaching out to, both inbound and outbound, and giving them the content that they can connect with at the different inflection points of the buyer's journey. For example, if your data is dirty, if it's not clean, if it's not segmented, if you can't understand different niches of prospects, where they are, the industry they're in, what their pain points are, you won't be able to provide meaningful and relevant information to them to move them along the buyer's journey. And if you don't have a clean buyer's journey, or you don't follow up with them when they ask you to follow up and it takes too long, or you just, email them too often, any of those things can create a lot of frustration that results in them never being customers, because they screen you out and you don't become a customer. Mm-hmm. So it really begins there during the demand and buyer's journey. And then it continues post-sale.
We didn't talk about it in the beginning, but I want to hit, if you guys don't know, Alan mentioned that he was the founder of Demand Revenue. And so he serves as a fractional CMO, among other things that he helps companies with, and has worked for a number of our clients. And so, what's nice is in your ability to come into organizations and bring a bit of a objectivity, because you, in most cases, were not the first head of marketing. You may not be the last head of marketing, but you're certainly there to come in and see if you can inspect what they expect, and then have some really radically candid conversations about how the customer experience actually is by talking to customers. When clients hire you, how do you go about understanding what the client experience is and what the client experience maybe was architected to be?
Well, first of all, I do two things. So I'm both an interim or fractional CMO, and I'm a CMO executive advisor or CMO coach. I've actually coached over 100 CMOs when I was at Serious Decisions in Forrester, after being a serial CMO and general manager. But when companies hire me, I try to ask basic questions, and I tend to work very cross-functionally. So I understand, where the strengths and gaps might be in the marketing organization. But, most organizations, as they grow, alignment is more difficult between marketing, sales, product, and finance organizations. So I try to understand very early on what the level of alignment or misalignment is. Like, is there a consistent go-to-market strategy? Are they targeting the same niches? Are the strategies complementary? And then I always like to speak with customers and look at the data. I'm a big believer in Net Promoter Score, and I guess we'll talk about it in a little bit.
Yeah, we should get into that.
But it's not just what the number is, it's what you do with the information. It's what you do with the customer comments to really understand. I also look to see, do they have an understanding of the personas they're marketing to, and the buyer's journey and the post-sale customer life cycle? How much work have they done in that area? And if they haven't, it's very difficult to understand the inflection points to drive growth in the organization. So I always begin by asking a series of questions to begin to understand the environment and not make any assumptions coming in.
You're familiar with our D3 methodology, and when we put the methodology together, and where it gets its name is these three core disciplines of demand creation, demand management, and demand expansion. And in demand expansion, forgetting that, I don't want to forget, but I just mean not talking about customer experience in terms of the prospect cycle, which we should talk a bit. But let's say now you have a customer. The amount of work that we do for customers in terms of onboarding nurtures, adoption nurtures, retention nurtures, loyalty nurtures, the work that we do is significant in those areas. And yet I just want to call out that that's not a common request that we get from our clients. They are so focused on demand creation and demand management, getting the next new logo, that the marketing team is not often very focused. And it's when we take them through the methodology and say, look, if you want to maximize revenue, you've got to maximize and focus your initiatives in demand creation, demand management, and demand expansion. And when we ask them questions like, well, how much of your revenue comes from the install base? It's never single digit, and it's normally with a 6 in front of it. And yet, wait, so if you sold them a license for this particular SaaS application, are you doing anything to ensure adoption? No. Really? So someone might buy a 100-user license of something, and you're not really focused on making sure that they're getting users into the system and getting trained and used? No, we don't currently focus on that. Should you? Sure. We just haven't gotten to it yet. And it's like, wow, you're just scratching the surface. And, for those of us who renew technology every year, like we just had our Salesforce renewal, they lost 8 licenses, from us because at a macro level, we're moving from Salesforce to Dynamics. We use Dynamics at BDO Digital, and we use Salesforce here. So they'll eventually lose the license entirely. But I can tell you, during the year, they didn't do anything checking on adoption of the platform. And I'm wondering if that's consistent with your expertise advising so many different companies, both from your background at Sirius and others. But why isn't marketing focused on the install base from a client experience perspective more than they are?
You bring out a huge problem, a consistent problem among many organizations that have over time over-focused on demand and not defined demand adequately. When I think of demand, I think of not only new logos, but upsell, cross-sell. And in fact, I did spend 6 years at Sirius Decisions and Forrester. I'm a big believer in the campaign framework. And there are a lot of companies that do random acts of marketing. Mm-hmm. And what I believe, you have fewer bigger campaigns, and you have different elements of the campaign. You've got reputation, programs, and tactics. You've got demand, which is new logos and upsell, cross-sell. You have customer engagement and retention, and you have sales enablement and service enablement. And they all work together to grow the business. And, marketing has for too long over-focused on new logos, which is a minority percent of growth.
Yeah.
And, and I've had many conversations with CFOs that, it's really the net revenue retention, it's the lifetime value that drives long-term growth and multiples. And that's a huge problem marketing organizations need to focus on. You need to really recalibrate what marketing is doing from just helping with new logos and demand and, pretty brochures and events to driving a holistic customer experience.
It
From
seems
the prospect to, through onboarding, and as you mentioned, the whole customer journey through its inflection point.
it just seems like it's almost, I don't know if it's an oxymoron's the right way. Like the client experience is focused so much around the install base, not the prospect experience. And yet the marketing focus is so much on generating new demand and not the install base. It's like they're in absolute conflict with each other, where really, I mean, a large enough organization, I believe, should have a marketing team that has resources and teams focused at net new as well as the install base, and to divide and conquer that. I'd love to get your perspective on that. I don't think you can be jack of all. I think you actually need distinct marketing teams and focuses, under one organization that focus. You feel the same way?
I do. I agree. And in fact, the more nascent function in a lot of organizations, and I'm working with two of them right now, and they're not small organizations. One is $500 million, the other one is $900 million, and they need to build customer marketing functions within marketing. Mm-hmm. They've had a demand function for a long time, marketing operations, marketing communications. I've helped literally over 100 different CMOs and VPs of marketing with marketing organization design. And the newest areas that many companies don't have yet are customer marketing and campaign functions that are really important. Really, really important.
What was it like working at Sirius Decisions? We're both on similar paths, right? Sirius, to me, one of the reasons I liked building demand gen before we became part of BDO Digital is I like the advisory piece, but I like the hands-on keyboard work. I was never comfortable as an advisor or consultant that would just prescribe and then kind of wish them good luck and hope everything works out. So I really liked teaming up with Sirius Decisions and said, hey, look, you guys are going to talk about the demand waterfall, and anywhere you talk about it, I want to follow right behind you and operationalize that and put that together. The question I want to ask you is, in that period of time to now, have you seen any fundamental changes in marketing leadership in a good direction? Any changes that are taking a step back?
Yeah, well, I'm a big believer that chief marketing officers need to be good conductors, like orchestra conductors. They need to understand the creative and breakthrough creatives, to their target audiences.
Which is hard, really hard.
Which is hard and takes a lot of work and a lot of research. And they have to understand the analytical. Mm-hmm. So the creative is like jazz, the analytical is like classical. And you have to I've written some blogs on that. You have to be really faceted both. And it's not everybody that does that. Some people come from an agency background. Some people come from a more analytics background. But today's CMOs really need to do both and combine them together. And, they need to be a really good cross-functional leader, really understand sales. So I've been very fortunate because I started in finance, and then I was in marketing, and then I was in sales, and I had some operations. And in addition to being a CMO, I've been a general manager a few times where I've had marketing, sales, and product reporting to me. And you were asking about the time at Sirius. So before I went to Sirius, I was a serial CMO and general manager. And this is the first time I worked with a lot of companies. And I really loved helping CMOs not make all the same mistakes I've made my whole career. And Sirius, as you know, had more models and frameworks than Carter has pills. I'm probably dating myself with that expression. but they had a model and framework for everything because they had over 100 analysts just thinking up new models and frameworks.
Yeah.
I had two roles there. I was in the chief marketing officer, executive partner, and analyst group, but I also had responsibility for all of the healthcare segments globally, since I have a lot of background in healthcare. And I grew that into our fastest growing segment, best retention. And, and I was there for 6 years, really enjoyed it. I loved working with CMOs, helping them in a lot of different areas. And I saw so many patterns over and over and over
Let's
again.
talk about that.
Well, one is lack of alignment. Marketing and sales not being on the same page. Marketing, sales, product. As companies grow, cross-functional alignment is more difficult but more important. to drive productive growth, to drive operational productivity. And sometimes, the internal competition is worse than the external competition.
Yeah.
So getting people on the same page is important.
I don't know if I've ever said this, Alan, before we go into some of those other observations, but I candidly don't get it. And I don't know if that's because, like, when I graduated college, my professor, Jerry Rosen, at a Cal State Northridge back in 1988, talk about this in my book. He told me you should go into sales. And I thought he was going to offer me a job at his agency in LA. And I was like, oh, I thought you were going to offer me a job. He goes, I'm offering you something more valuable because we don't do sales. Go into sales. And I started my career at Microsoft. Best advice ever, because for me, he said, if you want to learn how to be a great marketer, you have to know why people buy. You need to know the psychology of it.
Yes.
So by growing up in sales for the first several years of my career, when I went into marketing, I have to say, people may have different perspective. I don't believe that marketing serves sales. Like, I'm not of that school of like,
I agree.
Like, we're their bitch. Like, that is not, we're a team. We both have different responsibilities, collective goals, but different responsibilities in the process of achieving those goals. And so I always understood the challenges of, like literally carrying a briefcase back in the day, not a backpack, and going into Hughes Aircraft and Lockheed and explaining what Microsoft Windows did and all the Microsoft Windows products like Word and Excel. And so I needed stuff from marketing to get those doors open and to arm me with the tools and demonstrations and stuff that I needed to do it. And we worked together really well. By the way, Microsoft was called the U.S. Sales and Marketing Division. The division I was in was the Sales and Marketing Division. So I think I had good mentors and good experiences. So it befuddles me. Like, I don't get it. But you see the same thing. It was the number one thing that you saw. So, but why? Why is there this lack? Like, fundamentally, why is there a lack of alignment? Is it the mindset and DNAs of sales and marketing teams that it's like cats and dogs and you can't go? Because I just don't get it. If I was a CMO today in an organization, I would spend my first 30 days going and talking to clients. Priority number one, finding out why they bought the product, what they like about it, who they evaluate in the competition, find out, I'd spend my time first month with talking to clients. And then I'd spend my time, I was going to say, and then I would talk to the salespeople and find out their perspective on the sales process and what they value and need from marketing. And I've done that repeatedly. So why is this such a challenge? Why is there such a lack of alignment?
Well, I'll say first, I have a similar background. I started at Xerox, and I was first in finance, then consulting, then marketing, and then I took a sales role because to progress at Xerox, I needed to have sales experience, and I always wondered how I would do. I always thought my personality, I would like it, but you don't know. So I took a pay cut, went into sales. I more than made it up the first year, and I doubled my income the second year and made President's Club. And and that's always helped me be a better marketer also, understanding what it's like to carry a bag. And I think the issue is where people came from. So what what their frame is. If you've only been with an agency and you haven't carried a bag or you haven't had other functional experience, it's a little more difficult. You may, have your own marketing speak and marketing language that isn't the language of business. You have to be able to talk with a CFO and a CSO and speak the same language. And you have to drive cross-functional alignment and be on the same team. So you have to be a real collaborator, and you have to listen to people and listen to where they're coming from.
Got it. So you think that's what it is, that it's that lack of experience from carrying a bag or doing sales makes it difficult to understand. Yeah, could be that. Pivoting back to client experience, I heard someone say once, I don't know if it was you, that the CEO should be like the chief experience officer, a rebrand there. Someone made that comment. I don't think it was you. But the point is that they should really care about it. Who is the chief experience officer?
And maybe you heard that from me, David, but a lot of people ask me who should be responsible for overall customer experience. And I always say that's an easy one. It's the CEO. Him or him need to set the company culture, to be customer centric, really customer centric, and they really need to believe in it. Now, he or she can delegate that to either a chief marketing officer, a chief customer officer, a chief sales officer, but they have to be bought in, and they have to really drive that in the culture.
Okay.
And if they don't, it's going to be difficult.
What happens when the chief experience or the CEO is not the chief experience officer? Do you talk to him or her about it? Or does that role now fall to someone else? Because some CEOs are just not capable of it. They don't. I mean, I don't want to label people, but if some CEOs are very strong introverts, surprisingly, and they're very technical, normally like the founder syndrome. If it's someone who came out of technology and invented the mousetrap, they may not have
we
that.
know that they will come.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Certainly most of the people who listen to Demand Gen Radio are not CEOs and marketing team. What's marketing's role in the customer experience? Especially, I want to chat about NPS, right? Because it's normally marketing that is putting the programs together to capture that information, but they're not just a middleman, right? So I've seen marketing leaders take on client experience and do it very successfully. I've also seen the head of customer success lead in those role and capacities. But given your background, if it's not the CEO, or in addition to the CEO, who and how should they be participating in architecting the client experience?
Well, there may be some education involved if the CEO doesn't first understand the importance, but they have to be bought into it, whether they're the main person or not. They have to really set the culture, as I mentioned. But I've been responsible for customer experience as a CMO in my background a couple of times, and whoever it is, you really need to bring people together cross-functionally. So, and you need to be able to measure what the level of your customer experience is currently. So, and understand, what they love about you that you can put in the promotion, the promoters, and where they have issues with your experience. And, you want to get comments from them. You want to understand what their frustrations are. And the most important thing is if we're talking, for example, Net Promoter Score, is not what the number is, but what you do with what they tell you, how quickly you do it, and then how you communicate back and demonstrate that you're listening to them and you're making changes based on their feedback. I'm actually working with 2 clients through this now, and it's amazing. A lot of it's common sense, David, but it's amazing how many companies are not doing it.
Yeah. No, for sure.
And can benefit from it.
And when you've worked with us and work with the team, we always look at our onboarding experience with a new client and everything from what's in the first deck, because we normally share a deck where the person who hired us is not necessarily even in that call. Maybe we were hired by the CMO, but it's the head of marketing operations that we're kicking off with, or the head of demand gen. And how long that deck is and what is in that deck, because we know that's the first experience for this team. This team may not have been involved in the whole buying process of bringing our team on board to help our clients with, maybe it's Marketo, or maybe it's some of the Adobe stack or CRM, or maybe it's helping with strategy first and then tools implementation second. So now we've got 5 people on a call who've never met my team before. They weren't involved in the process. And we really make sure that we are constantly improving that onboarding experience. And I'll give an example why, because sometimes the people that are in that, they don't want their cheese moved at all. Or they were working maybe with a different agency, or maybe they've been there for a long time and implemented a lot of the systems and are now hearing that it's time to bring about change. So we really coach our team about change management, how people might respond. Your excitement of like, thank you so much, Alan. Great to meet you. As I understand from our sales organization, we're going to be helping you with implementing a revised lead scoring system and creating some new nurtures. Well, if the person's in the room who built the lead scoring system and you sound all excited about that, that may be the right approach, but they might be like, well, what's wrong with our lead scoring system? I built it. It's been in place for 3 years. And so, just in professional services, as you know, it's a lot about the people, and there's a lot of emotion to the work that you're doing, especially bringing about change. On the product side, I find it's a little easier. If I go and let's say I was the chief marketing officer for consumer product, I'm going to think about, you are a very passionate person about the prospect experience, but let's say I've now bought it and it's being delivered by Amazon to my doorstep, I definitely would be thinking about the unboxing experience, what it looks like, how it feels, whether we need to include any kind of documentation, whether the lid should have like a big QR code in it, and that's what takes them to an onboarding. And I'd really think about every single touch point of that and make sure that that first unboxing experience and implementation of the product was just phenomenal. I'll give you an example. I bought these egg cups. By the way, if you take nothing from today, everybody, if you'd like to make soft-boiled eggs, they're these cups, silicone cups on Amazon. They're amazing. But guess what? After I used it the first time and I ditched the instructions, I forgot how long to keep them in the pot for. I had no idea. And of course, I went online and found it quickly, but I'm like, that feedback should get to them because it should probably right beyond the silicone cup. That
I was going to say that.
You know,
I was going to say you could put it on the cup.
Yeah, 4 to 5 minutes, and okay, that's how long it was. But you got to interview clients and find out what it is. Let's talk about NPS because I'm taking us there. How do you find out the feedback from your clients and what do you do with it? I mean,
so with NPS, obviously, if you're not familiar, it's a 0 to 10 scale. And folks that give you, and it's how likely would you be to recommend our company to friends, associates, etc., colleagues. And folks that give you a 9 or 10 are called promoters. They are really advocates of your brand. They love your brand, and you should look at their comments versus your marketing and see if there's some other things that you should be promoting you're not promoting. The folks that give you 7s and 8s are called passives. They're neither positive nor negative. And the folks that give you 0s to 6s are detractors. Mm-hmm. So if we take the promoters out for a moment and you look at the detractors and the passives, in addition to asking them for the rating, you always want to ask them, why did you say that? Why did you give us that rating? And you want to look at the comments and you want to see what their input is and what their frustrations are. And then you want to analyze and categorize that. And you mentioned about, driving CX, from marketing or wherever in the organization. You want to make sure that you have a cross-functional team looking at the feedback so you categorize it correctly and you can assign responsibility to the different areas. I'm actually going through that now with one client. This is onboarding. This is product. This is our interface related. This is our follow-up process, etc. And you want to actually pick things that you're going to act on quickly. And then you want to communicate back to customers what you want to thank them for the feedback, and you want to communicate in two ways, one-to-one with your large customers and through marketing communications with your entire customer base to say, hey, we weren't as good as we needed to be here. We're trying to continuously improve customer experience. This is what you told us. This is what we've done. We hope you can see the difference. And you keep doing that quarter over quarter. I'll give you one example. I was CMO North America for a Swiss-based dental implant firm. And we did NPS quarterly. We also had NPS for our competitors. So we knew where we were stronger and weaker. And actually, we were last in North America. So I put together a cross-functional team. I was CMO of North America. And we found out what the main issues were, and we acted on them, and we communicated back. And we actually went from last to first in 1 year by doing that. I have a blog on that on my website, Demand Revenue, the story of what happened. But it's, David, it's common sense. It's really common sense. Find out what your customers think of your not just the prospect, but the whole, as you were just talking about, the entire post-sale customer experience, from when they bought, the onboarding, and something else you said, with new people involved. I thought you guys did a really good job of onboarding, by the way. I remember.
No, thank you.
And I was at that first meeting, even though I was CMO. Yeah. But what happens when you go from pre-sale to post-sale is, especially with very large deals, is the buying committee and the retention committee can be different people, right? As you pointed out.
Yep.
You've got different people involved, and you have to show value. And change management is hard, and a lot of what you guys do is change management. You have to be sensitive to where people are coming from. And that's, a big part of what needs to happen today because so many things need to evolve.
Let me ask you some tactical questions as
Yeah.
because you have a relationship with Fred, who created, he's at Bain, Reinheld. Am I saying that right?
Reichheld.
Reichheld.
Fred Reichheld. Yeah.
He created, regional MPS like 20 years ago,
20 years
and now we're up to 3.0. What's the current thinking on how often do you ask this question? What's the right media to ask the question? Is it an email campaign, and how often does it go? How do you collect that information consistently and genuinely, and how often?
It can be email. It can be, Qualtrics. It can be Medallia. It can be however you get the information. The important thing is don't get it too often. Don't oversample people. Don't, it's really a gift when they give you information, then act on it and do something with it. And he started NPS 20 years ago. He's been at Bain for 40 years.
Wow.
He just came out with a new book called Winning on Purpose, which is fantastic on customer experience. And he has a new metric, which I think is really interesting. And he's calling it earned growth. And it's relatively simple. If you take your net revenue retention, so the customers you keep plus the growth from those customers, and you look at your new logos, and you can bifurcate for your new logos how many came from a customer referral.
Mm-hmm.
If right at the beginning you can find out by asking them how many came for a large part because of a customer referral, and then you take your net revenue retention plus the new logos from referrals, he's calling that earned growth.
Okay.
And when you think about it, it's really the value
Yeah.
of your customer base, not only staying with you and growing with you, but bringing their friends in too, bringing their associates in too. I think it's a wonderful metric. The problem with finance, and I know who I'm talking with, BDO, so I have to be careful what I say probably, your owner, is that all the metrics in GAAP and generally accepted accounting principles over time are looking in the rear view mirror. There are no customer metrics. Mm-hmm. And it's the customer activity and growth and retention and referrals that drive, lifetime value, long-term value, multiples, So financially, we need some new metrics to really evaluate the health of organizations other than traditional GAAP accounting.
Yeah.
Which looks in the rearview mirror.
I just,
that make sense?
on that topic, for sure it does. And I just learned about this. BDO is phenomenal in terms of training across the organization. When we're globally a $10 billion company, and BDO USA is a $2 billion company, BDO Digital, the group that my group is in, is a $140 million. There's a lot of services being delivered to generate all that revenue. And so they're really good about, cross-educating the teams on what BDO as an organization can do. Like my group was acquired. We brought a whole set of new services around the methods and technologies for driving revenue and driving sales. So we've been educating other groups. Well, one group I learned recently has pioneered and developed quality of business. The M&A group, when they are out assisting companies with finding new buyers and homes, they've developed a methodology for assessing the quality of the business. And it's some of the things that you just talked about. So there's always been quality of revenue, or at least for a long time, there's been looking at quality of revenue and how predictable and repeatable that is. But how quality is the business? Some of those more intangible things, and customer experience is a big part of that, right? I mean, you want to make sure that no portion of your revenue from a quality of revenue is more than 10% from any one customer. But looking at retention and looking at client satisfaction, looking at reviews online. I'm going to ask you that question. Should marketers, and are they looking at reviews on social media you find regularly and routinely around the products and services?
They should be. It's all part of looking at your brand. It's not only the reach of your brand, but it's what people associate with your brand. And looking at social media is one way to evaluate that. Maybe a little quicker than doing a $1 million brand study, which is very expensive. But they obviously they should always be looking at the different signals that the market is sending you about how people are perceiving your brand and where you think the strengths and weaknesses are, so you can continuously improve.
I mean, some of the best marketing messages, value proposition, and campaigns that I've run have definitely come from listening to the voice of the client online, and more importantly, when I worked at Ellie Mae and I was their head of marketing, I spent that first month in mortgage brokerages offices, finding out why they were using a competitor's product at that time, because we were just introducing it. And to hear loan processors talk about what they liked and disliked about the competitor's product, loan officers, broker owners, they all had different value propositions and different things they liked. And if I had talked to just the product management team, I would be really missing the why around why someone would want to migrate and what would be involved in migrating their business.
And how difficult it is.
And then Sig Anderman, who's no longer running the organization, but back then he was so incredibly passionate about the client experience. And he bought all of us the book Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. And he really talked about how, like, if you have customers or influencers out there talking about your product or service, I mean, I'm sure somebody who likes soft-boiled eggs has gone to Amazon or will go to Amazon and see, what are these silicone cups Dave's raving about? 5 minutes, by the way. 5 minutes is the amount of time in the water. Word of mouth marketing is so incredibly powerful, and you hit on that. Let's wrap up with one topic that I think is really good for you to address, given the work you're doing these days. Is, what advice do you have for today's marketer that is really challenged with incredible innovation and changes that are taking place, incredibly noisy environments where your competition is everybody for time and attention and dollars, and really what's happening maybe a little bit with the economy these days? Are we in a good place for marketing, or is marketing going to need to start worrying about our budgets again? I have a perspective on that, but I'd love to get your what advice you'd be sharing for marketers in those areas.
Sure. I'd say, first of all, none of us know everything. None of us do. And so it's not only important our experience and what we know, but the strength of our networks. And it's really important to get good advisors and mentors and people around you that can help you through some of these types of questions, that understand you and your business and can give you good advice. That's really, really important, because none of us know everything. Yeah. In terms of being, operationally efficient and this, it kind of depends which company you work for and what the, what the industry you're in and where it is, but I would say in general that, CMOs and heads of marketing need to show CFOs that they are responsible with the assets that's assigned to them. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of ways, if you want to reduce cost and be more efficient, there are a lot of ways to do that. I mean, one is do a content audit. If you do a content audit, you'll probably throw away 70% of what you have and save a lot of money and come out with much more relevant content, which will, and how you serve the content to the sales force, how easy it is for them to find. A lot of those operational things, you can become more efficient and save money and drive a lot of change, and a lot of really good change. Or if you're in a very large enterprise firm and you have 17 agencies that you work with worldwide, what about thinking about consolidating some of that and improving the consistency of your brand and leveraging some vendors to reduce your costs. So there are a lot of things that CMOs can do, and it's important that they demonstrate prudent, resource allocation of the assets that they have. And in this kind of environment, it's even more important that, you show that you can be operationally efficient, and marketing isn't just a place to spend money, but it's, it's a growth engine for the company. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I want to come back to your first point, which is about, building your network. It's an expression I use often. None of us are smarter than all of us. Alan, I'll make sure we put a link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. And I encourage you guys to just, at a minimum, connect with Alan. And then if you have any questions, reach out to him. Like I said, he's worked with a number of our clients and supporting them. Given the work that we do in terms of helping people with their technology and systems and really, driving revenue and growth through the broad spectrum of demand generation, having someone like Alan, in addition to my team, gives you the resources you need, and maybe challenge some of the things that you're doing, how you're doing them, or maybe some of the things that you're just not getting to. And then career coaching. All of us that have gone through career progression in marketing or in business, we're always here to help you guys. As Alan said, people like you yourself, Alan, and myself, I just enjoy every day helping people. And it's interesting on the podcast where thousands of people listen to it. I'll say, hey, if anybody wants a copy of this book, let me know. If anybody wants, to reach out, please do. Very few people do. They always feel that you're really busy, or how do you have time for them, or they're not important. But I spend time on it, and I'm bringing it again as like, Alan would be happy to have a conversation with you, as would I, if we can help you, because we're all in this together, and it's a challenging time. On that note, my prediction is, unless the economy really gets stronger faster, and we saw some signs at least this week, and this is the week of July 7th, that there are some stronger signs in the markets, your budget is at risk. It's always at risk, but it is at risk in these times. And if you find yourself in a situation where the executive team is putting pressure on marketing to scale back and not use your stuff, ask yourself if you're really tying what you're doing to revenue enough and communicating that. Because the more that you are a revenue engine and not a cost center from a brand perspective, the more that your budget is going to be protected. If, God forbid, that headcounts slow down or budgets get cut in marketing, I can assure all of you, have been doing this long enough, that it takes about 60 to 90 days for the pendulum to swing back again. Worst case, 120 days when revenue starts really dipping, and then they ask what can be done, and marketing is like, we need to launch more campaigns and be more aggressive. So hopefully you don't get into that stage. Any other advice you have, Alan, on navigating a bit of uncertain economic times? Because when everything's thriving, it's here's more budget, here's more headcount, here's more everything. And right now we're not seeing that this year. We're seeing actually the marketing layoffs, declining positions being put in place, and budgets getting squeezed.
How soon things can change.
Yeah.
I'd say my best advice is develop a really good relationship with your CFO. If you go to my website, demandrevenue.com, I have a number of blogs there on creating relationships with CFO, CIO, CSO, CHRO, but the CFO and CMO relationship is a really important one. And to have a good relationship, I would recommend that highly. Not just in times that may be a little dicey, but all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
One of the Heidi Malin, who I've had on the podcast, as well as some others. By the way, she's one of my best referral sources, and been a client many times. And now that she's working on the private equity side, the companies in their portfolio, she'll refer a lot of business to us. But all of us who have had that very valuable, and in fact, Chris Romo, who's our head of finance at BDO Digital, just before this call, was asking me for some information. One of the first people that I got to know, because I knew that, if we're going to build out a marketing team here at BDO Digital, that budget's going to go across his desk, and making sure he understands what the vision is, why we're hiring these people, what we're going to put these dollars to, how much cost we're talking about, and then how much revenue we're going to drive. He's fully on board. It's great to have that relationship. Alan, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and sharing your passion about client experience. I've probably done 7 sessions on client experience. So if this is a topic, you guys, that you're equally passionate about, look at some of the other podcasts that I've done on that topic, because I've had some of the New York Times bestselling authors on the podcast talking about client experience and how important it is. Because like Alan, man, why bring on new clients when they're just sneaking out the back door, right? If you don't fix that. Well, have a good week. I'm glad the hip surgery went well. I'm glad you're recovering well. And hey, if there's anything I can ever do to help you, you know where to find me.
Same here. Thank you.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode. You guys, cranking out the episodes for you guys. If you haven't checked us out on YouTube, be sure to go to YouTube and search for Demand Gen or Demand Gen TV. Click subscribe. There's a little notifications bell that I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. A lot of people forget to click that, including myself, and that will just let you know on YouTube when we release a new episode. I'm making some stuff later today. So if you're listening to this, I'm making some stuff later today with a crew from Sendoso. We've been doing a lot more MarTech demos. So I look forward to you guys checking that out. We're talking about client experience today, and Sendoso has a wonderful platform for sending gifts and nice things to your clients. So if you're looking for a way to operationalize giving within your organization, check out those videos as well. If you have any suggestions or things that you want me to cover, I'm always just a click away on LinkedIn, or you can drop me an email. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. Take care.